Welcome, everybody. This is Joel, your boy, here with the Read Your Keys podcast. Today, my guest is Mr. Brett Pike. He is an education consultant and author of The Good Bears Always Tell the Truth. It is currently number one on Amazon for Christian children's concepts. And you can also find him at theclassicallearner.com. I found Brett, like a lot of things these days, through Twitter. I think he's got some pretty interesting ideas. I actually picked up the children's book for my kids, and they're enjoying it. I enjoyed it. Welcome to the show, Brett.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's get into just right off the bat. Where are you from, and where do you currently reside, or things like that?
Yeah, well, I'm currently in the heart of Zombieland here in New York. You look outside, you see masked monsters walking around, threatening to attack me every time I try to go to the grocery store.
What part of New York is that? Are you like upstate New York or in the city?
No, I'm on Long Island. And it was interesting. I was driving home last night, and I got stopped at the train, and it was Friday night at about 9 o'clock on Long Island. And the train was going into New York State, to New York City, to Penn Station. And you watch it go by, and literally, and I'm not exaggerating, not one person was on the entire train.
I mean, I'm a West Coast guy. I've never been to New York. Obviously, not normal.
Yeah, I mean, typically, if you go back 8 months on a Friday night, I mean, you would see that train pretty much packed shoulder to shoulder. So it's really, it's quite fascinating what's happened with people not traveling, and especially people avoiding these big death traps that are these big government overreach cities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I'm here in Arizona, and the other night we took our kids to the park, and people were playing basketball. Kids were playing Little League. Our kids were on the swings. It was nice just to kind of see that people were just going about their lives. My wife went to California a few weeks back, and she was like, "Yeah, everybody was really worked up about it over there," and so she was pretty happy to get back home because we're not used to that. When this whole thing started, we were cautious, but it just seems like people are pretty worked up, and it's the big cities where people are really worked up.
Yeah, well, it's a very fascinating paradigm to walk outside, and you'll see people that are comfortably living their lives with a little bit of anxiety from the masked zombies. And then you have this large segment of the population, especially when you talk about New York City, California, where, I mean, they're terrified to give someone a hug. Mm-hmm. And it's quite telling about the state of mental health in the United States right now.
That's something that I'm concerned about. It's just you can't see somebody's full face. You treat people differently. I think when that's the case, you can't see their face. Or I don't know. It's just something that I don't like seeing, even here, where if in certain stores you have to wear them when you go in. I just don't think that your people are as friendly, or it makes people on the defensive just having somebody who's a stranger nearby, whereas before, like, you get that whole 6 feet apart. I don't think that's healthy.
Yeah, well, I tell them I have a medical condition, and if they ask me why, I tell them I'm allergic to bullshit.
Yeah, I've I prefer not to wear them. Like, there's they opened up the gyms over here, and some of the gyms are requiring them when you're working out. It's like, man, that's not healthy. Like, how are you going to work out and have your face covered. Like I remember, like I'm not a big UFC guy, but you would see like some of these UFC guys are wearing they would wear masks to try and simulate high altitude to help them with their cardio. But I mean, we're talking about guys that are, you know, really good athletes. Um, and in the gym, you know, working out, you're going to get regular guys like me. I don't know if that's the best idea. I just think the health concerns from the side effect from the what is it the cure is worse than the sickness. Um, I think that's the way we're headed. I mean, people have lost a lot of jobs. Like that's people are stressed out. I mean, if you're fortunate, you're still getting your checks, but if not, um, I mean, I can't imagine how hard it is to sleep at night. You know, trying to figure out how you're going to make more money unless you raise your prices. If you're a restaurant, or you know, if your business isn't allowed to open, I don't I don't know how that's okay.
Yeah, well, I find it very fascinating that people wholeheartedly believe that what the CDC and the World Health Organization is doing is about health. You say, is it about health or is it about control? Well, I see what they're doing. They're having everyone wear the mask. They're making traveling. They're making commerce. They're making a living very difficult. But I don't see them talk much about health. They say put a muzzle over your face and don't you dare try to protest against it. But they don't say anything about, I don't know, strengthening the immune system, eating healthy,
Hmm.
running, not drinking alcohol,
Yeah.
vitamin C, vitamin D, all of these things that you don't need a medical degree to know make you a stronger person, you would think would be a priority during what they've deemed a pandemic. But they don't talk about it at all. And what that tells me is that everything they're doing, and you can see this with their own numbers, right? It's the CDC just this week released that only 9,000 people have been killed by COVID-19 alone, and that the people they're counting as COVID-19 deaths had on average, and this is like 94% of the people that died,
Yeah.
2.6 pre-existing conditions. So when
Right.
I see that, I say, okay, this isn't about protecting me. This is about control. This is about political power. And this is about passing an agenda that has long been in the works by the people that really run things with the big money and the puppet strings.
Hmm. Yeah, and I noticed that yeah, it's not about health because when the first go around with flatten the curve, it was like okay, you know, stay inside, you know, wear a mask, and you know, restaurants were closed and people were ordering takeout. It's like I'm no, you know, I'm no, you know, what do they call them, epidemiologists or whatever. Like I don't read go into the weeds and the studies, but I do know that to be healthy, you know, you need to eat well, you need to get outside and get some sunlight, and need to get some exercise. Like that's going to strengthen your immune system or help you to fight off. You know, if you do get something like that's I think that's pretty common. But and then not only that, but just the being able to associate with people that you know and care about, and being able to, you know, hug them. That's just part of being human, and you know we need those things, and to be separated from people, to not see loved ones, to be, you know, alone watching the news or Netflix all day, not getting any exercise, not getting any sun, like that doesn't seem healthy to me. That seems like it's gonna make people sicker. But yeah, to your point, they didn't come out and say, hey, you know what, it'd be a good idea if you dropped, you know, 10 to 20 pounds to start off with, and to eat well, to strengthen your immune system. They said, you know, wear a mask. And it's just like that doesn't seem like the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, we really empower some deranged people. You walk in public and you have a 300-pound lady named Karen with a cigarette in her mouth, tell you that you have to put a muzzle over your face because
uh,
she might get sick.
yeah. What do you like? You're in education, and I think that's a fundamental part of it. Like, I played sports, and science wasn't my favorite class, but I have a I can put two and two together just like you did. It's like, hey, if you're overweight and smoking a cigarette, like the least of your concerns. Or I guess you should really be concerned if you have this because you have the comorbidities. But it's like if you really were serious about your health, um, you know, diet and exercise is really fundamental.
Well, yeah, and what you see is the reason they're in that position in the first place because you have this quote unquote pandemic situation going around, and these people are in a state of heightened fear, and because of that, they're acting out. But the way they're acting out is by taking the responsibility of their own health, and they're saying that responsibility is on Joel, my health.
Hmm.
If I get sick, that's Joel's fault. That's not because I've been shoving my face with genetically modified food with Roundup sprayed on it for the last 10 years and, um, my diabetes started to kick in.
Hmm. I don't know who it was. I think it was like Wayne Dyer. He's a personal development guy, but he said basically to show you that I care about you, I'm gonna take care of me for you, and you take care of you for me. And I think that's kind of what's been lost in all this is like, yeah, if you're really concerned about me and spreading this coronavirus, the first step should be if you're so concerned about me wearing a mask or not, is you should be taking care of yourself before you worry about what I'm doing. But now it seems like this is an excuse to say, try and tell me what to do. It's like, well, I thought this was my body, my choice, but I guess not.
Yeah, well, it really shows. I do a lot of research and study, historical study. My bachelor's is in history education, into social conditioning.
Hmm.
And a lot of what we're seeing right now is big pharma and the government and all of these organizations, they have big public relation firms really setting the narrative, setting the conversation. So, what are some of the things you hear? You'll turn on the news or you'll go in public and they'll say, if you're not wearing a mask, you're selfish. You'll hear this from Nipple Rings Cuomo a lot, right? If you don't have a mask on, it's because you're selfish. The mask doesn't protect me. The mask protects you, protect your neighbor, grandma's going to die, blah, 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 blah. And what they're doing is they're framing the debate because I turn that around and I say, in 20 years, you're going to have to look into the eyes of your grown child. And when that child says to you, Dad, why don't I have freedom? Didn't America used to be a free country? You're going to look your son in the eye and say, oh, well, Daddy was too afraid to protect your freedom. So now, the whole country is the TSA.
Yeah, that's interesting that you kind of put that. When were you around for like how old are you? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, 32.
Okay, I'm 38. So like I remember going to the airport pre 9/11, and my wife and I were long distance, so we would be able to walk all the way up to the gate and say bye at the gate. And then once 9/11 hit, it was like, no, you got to wait at the security. But um, when all the, well, I'm sure too, you're in the New York area, but like right away, um, I remember like the conversation with like the Patriot Act and things like that. The pushback was like, hey, we're giving up civil liberties. And and I was like, yeah, that's true. We're giving up civil liberties. There's a valid point here. I understand that there's security concerns, but civil liberties when you give them up, you usually don't get them back without some kind of a struggle. And so we've kind of, you know, given those up. And now with this pandemic, we've given more civil liberties. It's like, whoa, like, I don't know, am I the only one that kind of sees this too? Because it sounds like you see that too. It's like, hey, we're giving up our liberties here. And you know, I'm not one to say that, oh, the virus is not a real virus. Yeah, it's a real virus, but I don't think that giving up civil liberties and having health departments decide what I need to do is the way to go about it.
Yeah, well, that's the modus operatus of government, right? It's problem, reaction,
Mhm.
solution. But they're creating the problem. They're waiting for your predictable reaction, and then they're giving you a solution, which is really a wolf taking out the fork and knife to eat dinner. I mean,
Mhm.
if you talk about 9/11, if you could go back 1998, read Project for a New American Century. And I mean, they essentially lay out everything that was going to happen in that document, including a Pearl Harbor like event that would be needed to make everything they wanted to happen. So then they unrolled the Patriot Act, which of course is antithetical because it's the complete opposite of what it really is. The Patriot Act is being so afraid. The descendants of George Washington, who went to war and fought the most powerful army in the history of the world because they didn't like a 3% tax. Now you're the descendant of that, and you're so afraid that you're going to let the government watch every little thing that you do and, violate you at the airport because what? Because Muhammad might have a box cutter on a plane? I got a better idea. How about I just carry a gun?
Well, they don't want you to carry a gun, right? Especially there in New York. You got some of the strictest laws there.
I'll tell you, Joel. I don't care much for the laws. I mean, listen, follow the law. Don't get yourself arrested. I'm releasing my next book is all about teaching children the Second Amendment, which I'm very
Hmm.
passionate about
Hmm.
because I want my son to grow up in an environment where his countrymen, especially like-minded countrymen, have as many guns and bullets as possible. Because
Hmm.
what we're discussing, coronavirus, 9/11, everything you see is very bad people taking our rights. And children go to school and they're taught, oh, guns are bad. Well, I mean, criminals don't follow laws, right? If you're a
Right.
criminal, what are you going to do? You're going to say, oh, the guns are illegal? Well, I'm going to get a gun. But Johnny Law, you and me, I follow the law. So it's going to say, oh, well, I can't have a gun. And then the criminal who doesn't follow the law, he has a big advantage over me. So I can't
Right.
stand for that.
You know what's interesting to me is, I mean, you're in an area that is, you know, an environment that really is uh, teaching all the things contrary to what you believe. So how did you get there? Are you a public school kid, or did you go to a private school?
Oh yeah, I was just a dumb public school kid who they wanted to put on ADHD medicine
Hmm.
because I just wouldn't sit still and I wouldn't pay attention. I didn't care much for school, um, which I think is my saving grace. No, really, it's probably my parents. You know, you have good parents,
Hmm.
you have the self esteem to think freely, and I think that's why they want so many broken homes. But um, yeah, no, I grew up in the New York public school system. I came through it. I was a resource room child. I um, probably B student. Didn't care much for school at all. Um, was pretty good at lacrosse.
All right, we're back on. Mia had a little glitch there, but we were talking about coming up, and you were talking about how you were in school and school resource kid because they didn't want to deal with you, so they threw you in the classroom. Or is that right?
Yeah, I was a little bit wild as a child. You know, I was a young boy. I didn't want to sit in a desk for 8 hours a day. I wanted to run around and have fun and explore the world. And obviously, the system doesn't think that's how young boys should learn. So
Hmm.
the teachers called my mom when I was in elementary school to the principal's office, and they had the school psychologist there. and they had their meeting, and they said, your son has ADHD, and what we need to do is put him on pharmaceuticals. And my mom promptly told them that they can take their pharmaceuticals, turn them sideways, and shove them up their ass. And thank you, Mom, for that, if you're out there listening. Yeah, so I was always a B student, never really excelled, went to college. I was good at lacrosse, so that got me there, and well, relatively good. You're a real athlete, so I don't want to prop myself up too much. And even college, I didn't take that seriously, and but until my senior year, I got a degree in history education. Figured I'd go back for a master's, and decided to take it serious from that point. Went that route. I finished at the top of my class in my master's program. And then when I graduated, I entered into the school system, and I said, this is all complete and utter bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these people don't have a original thought in their entire body. Maybe.
Where did you work at? Was it like in the middle school, high school?
Yeah, I jumped around a little bit. I worked in middle schools, high schools, and the early intervention program as well, which is better because it cuts out some of the bull. But
what were? I'm pretty sure there's a lot of complaints, but what were like some of the, not complaints, but issues that you found? What were some of them that, like, right off the bat, like, even as, day one, or like your first month working, that you're like, oh, this doesn't seem right? Or,
well, I mean, when you work in a school, you see the ideological uniformity, and it's troubling to say the least. I mean, you'll sit in one of these teachers' lunchrooms, which very interesting what goes on there. They're not exactly the most moral group of people, but I mean, they'll talk about ideas of freedom and original constitutionalism, like we were talking about before, the Second Amendment, and all of this sounds completely archaic. And this is why you get children coming up through schools where you'll have rooms full of adults that will think it's appropriate to teach a little child, a second grader, about sodomy, or to tell a little boy who's not intellectually ready to understand these concepts that, oh no, you're not a boy, but that little boy comes from a broken home, and that little boy is looking for your acceptance. So you say, you're not a boy, and he says, oh, okay, am I a girl? And they're really hurting these children. So the entire system is, in my opinion, it's fundamentally flawed from the base level.
So the schools that you were working in, were they like Title IX schools? Is that why? Because you said there's a lot of broken homes there. So did you see like because it was a lower income area that they were pushing some of these things, or was it kind of all across the board? Because I don't know what kind of school you were in. So like we talk about jumping around from schools, but the area matters too, right?
Yeah, well, I worked in a high school in Queens. I worked in a middle school on Long Island. Worked in a few schools in upstate New York, which I'll say are more wholesome. Well, some of them, but to me, from what I've seen, the problem is the institution itself. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, you'll say, oh, well, ideology is just by coincidence. You have unions. Once you're in for 3 years, you get tenure. Well, you don't get tenure. I mean, I could show you Project Veritas videos in which the head of the teachers union openly scheming. I mean, if anyone hasn't seen this, it's startling. You should watch it. Openly coaching teachers that have been accused of sexual assault, which is pedophilia, hitting children, about how to turn that around, not only keep their job, but actually make it so the child is the one that gets in trouble.
I might have seen that video. That was maybe a good 2 or 3 years ago, right? Like that was a few years ago, that video.
Oh yeah, a teacher comes out, or an undercover reporter who is claiming to be a teacher, speaks to the head of the teachers union and says, listen, there was this incident and I got angry and I hit the student. Now, if it's my job, if I'm the head of the teachers union, the first thing I'm thinking is, okay, I have to get this person away from the children because I
Mm-hmm.
can't have this
Right.
grown adult beating the students that I'm responsible for.
Right.
But instead, they did the opposite. What he did was he coached the teacher on how to make the student feel intimidated so that the student would think he would get in trouble for reporting what happened. And that is, I mean, there's a special place in hell for that type of abuse.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you don't do that. You don't do that to kids. So you're in public school. How long were you in the belly of the beast for?
Yeah, well, I worked in schools, the school system for a couple of years, and then the early intervention field for a bit longer. In total, I have about 10 years experience working in the field of education. Um, the truth is, I don't even care about the beast. I mean, I started my own company. I'm the CEO of Classical Learner. I work with families to try to help them formulate a better vision for what their child's education should look like. Because, yeah, you can go the route of the school district. That's why I tell people,
Mm-hmm.
don't ask me about curriculum. Who cares about curriculum?
Mm-hmm.
What matters is your objectives for, you know, what is the grown up you want to produce.
Right. Right. I think that as a parent, like I want my kids to have like a talent, right? Like if they were very athletic, I'd be like, wow, like that's really cool. Or if they're very artistic and could like, I don't know, be like some top level musician, like that's a talent, right? And that's well and good. Or if they made, started a $1 billion company or founded a $1 billion company, that's all great. But what do I want as a parent? Is that my main priority for me to like foster a top level athlete or top level music? Because those are skills. It's like, no, I want good kids. Like I want kids that are good and not nice kids. I mean good kids. Like a good kid will do nice things, but also stand up for the right things. I want good kids who are, you know, anchored in God, who has sharp minds and strong bodies. Like that's what I want. I want good kids that I want to be around when they're older. And I guess what I'm saying is that we've put so much into our education that we want like these really smart kids because that's top priority. It's like, yes, of course I want my kids to be smart and give them the opportunity to be smart, but I want them to be good before anything. Like if you were to take it away, like being good is what I want for them the most. And so yeah, I want their education to reflect that. Like this is the direction that I want you to go. And you'll get all these other things, as we progress through your educational journey anyway. But I think that's great. So how do you guys how do you facilitate that?
Yeah, well, I mean, if I could, I just, you bring up some good points. An education without the foundation of morality is basically worthless. I'll try to relate it to a way. You're a football guy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, think about someone like Antonio Brown, right? You take
Right.
this professional athlete who you watch him on the field, and he's as talented as anyone you'll ever see. In and
He's
out of
beautiful
cuts,
to watch,
he's
right?
a great route runner. Gets open. He's quick, electric with the ball in his hands. We say, who is this person? A person that burns every bridge he's ever came across. A person that treats the mother of his child with disrespect, not only in person but in public, which embarrasses her, in front of his children who grow up seeing that, who now think it's appropriate that it doesn't really matter if you treat a woman with respect. It doesn't matter how you treat your wife, the mother of your children, whatever it might be. And you teach them that it's appropriate to act that way in front of children. So I don't care how much success someone like that finds. He could turn out to be the best receiver in the history of the NFL. He could go on to coaching. He could become the president of the United States. But that will never change the fact that, in my eyes, he hasn't done anything even close to what I would call finding success in life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, that's interesting because yeah, it's how are we defining success, and I think that a lot of parents who are concerned about their kids' education are defining it as, hey, you get these, 4.0 GPA, and let's get you into a top college and get you a degree from a top college, and then from there that's going to open up opportunities for you. Um, like because I always tell people I'm pro education. I'm as pro education as you can be. Like I wanted to be a teacher, um, but then it was like I wanted to make more money than a teacher did. But my kids' education is extremely important to me. Um, but I don't want my kids to. I don't want their education to take them. I don't want their education to take them places where I don't think they should be, or learn like I don't want, like, I'm okay with having opposing views, but like my kids are young, they don't need opposing views yet. They need my views, right? Like, and so when you're talking about education, that's my goal for them. It's like, hey, have my views first, and then let's build a strong mind, and then you can go out, and then when you have opposing views, you can consider if they have merit or not, and then make decisions for yourself. Like I spoke to a guy, David, a few weeks back, and he was homeschooled, and he was talking about, like, how he wanted to get stronger, and he considered using steroids, but he did like a study on it, and he was like, you know what, I'm gonna leave that alone. It's like he did that all on his own. It's like, yeah, that's kind of what I want for my kids. It's for you to have this idea, wrestle with it, look at it, and then make a decision. And you have kids, right, Brett?
Yes, I have a son, and my wife and I are currently, God willing, working on another one. So we
There
will
you
see.
go. There you go. But you'll figure out right away. It's like they're gonna make their own decisions. Like, it's like, you didn't get that from me, but you're saying things like we've never said in this house before. So yeah, like I want them to be strong. That's really my goal is be good, strong kids, and like let's have the education that is going to facilitate that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one of the best things we can do is define words. So, like you, I am extremely pro education. I mean, shit, it's my whole life here.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I'm pro education, but I'm anti schooling. And what the system tries to do is make people think that those are the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And when these children go into the public school system, they don't get an education, they get an indoctrination.
Mm-hmm.
They're told, this is what you think. If you think otherwise, that makes you a bad person. And then they'll put an immense amount of, one, social pressure from the other students, all thinking you're a bad person for
Mm-hmm.
having different thoughts, and then they'll deny you approval from what you have been told from your parents, from the system, are authority figures. And children, if you've ever been around them, they crave your acceptance.
Right.
And these teachers take advantage of that. And I mean, much like what we talked about with the Project Veritas situation, in a way, it's a form of abuse.
Yeah, the schooling that I grew up with, I think has changed dramatically from what my kids were coming into, because I know Common Core wasn't a thing when I was in school, and so I don't know if my daughter was a baby yet or she was on the way, but she was a few years from kindergarten. They had started rolling out the Common Core stuff, and I remember reading about it because it's like, I'm going to have kids and I'm pro education, so what they learn matters to me. And the thing that was really concerning was when it was interviews with teachers who were going to the facilitators who were teaching them the Common Core curriculum, and it came down to basically like the facilitator was telling this to the teachers. I can't remember the article, but I remember reading this explicit because I was like, that does not sound good. It was basically, the facilitator said, stop asking questions. We just want to trust the experts and then go from there. And it was just like, what kind of education is that? That does not sound like learning. That does not sound like education. That does not sound like critical thinking. That does not sound like, that sounds antithetical to everything that I've ever been taught in school. And I'm a public school kid too. I'm from California. That does not sound like education. I was like, what? Like, I don't want my kids to just trust experts. That sounds like a slippery slope that I don't want to go down, or I want my kids to go down. So yeah, that was pretty concerning, and so that kind of just set off some red flags for me. And even before, like, I had kids that were, kindergarten age or anything. It's like, oh, we've got to pay attention to where we send those kids to school, or what are they going to learn? Like, we really need to know not only what are they learning, but who is doing the teaching.
Yeah, well, I think it's funny because when you see talks, when you hear the public conversation about what needs to be done with the schooling system, you'll always hear it framed in Common Core, No Child Left Behind, teacher salaries. Mm-hmm. But none of these things address the real problem, that the education system is flawed from its foundation, that any system that involves bureaucrats in Washington determining what will be done all around the country from the top down is inevitably going to be corrupt, because the only way you get into those positions is appointments by layers and layers of corrupt people. Mm-hmm. And the system itself is going to design the laws so that it protects itself, much in the same way that insider trading is illegal unless you're in Congress. Then you can insider trade as much as you want. Well, if people think this stuff is different with education, well, I think they spent too much time in public school.
Let's say it's even making a good attempt, because I'm a pretty big critic of public education myself. But let's say they intended to, like, there was a school here. They're like, oh, we want to set up a place where a school where kids can, like, learn to be a firefighter or a policeman, so they have that. But they also designed a school. It's like, hey, let's have a school for kids to learn how to code. Okay, so it's like, okay, like that's good. Like, kids can they kind of have a specialized high school to say, if I want to learn how to code and get into computers, in the weeds. Like, I'm not a computers guy, so I don't know all that stuff. But it's like, you can go to this school. It's like, okay, great. But if I'm a, 8th grader and this idea just popped up, it's like, well, it's not like you can just, like, flip a switch. That thing took like 5, 6, 7 years to come to fruition. So, that kid misses on it, and, the kids behind him miss out on it. We're homeschooling our kids now, and my daughter was like, hey, I'd like to be interested in coding. It's like, okay, yeah, let's find a program for you.
It's great.
Just like that. Mm-hmm. Right now. Like, we didn't wait years until she was, 7 years down the line. It was like right away, like, let's find a curriculum. And, we have some friends that they have a daughter who was already doing it. It's like, hey, what program are you guys using? Oh, we're using this program. Okay, great. Like, let's hop on. And then it was funny because my daughter was asking my wife, like, hey, can you help me with this coding thing? I was like, I don't even know. It's like, go email your friend and ask her. And so they're helping each other. But it's like, yeah, like, this is, that's kind of what education is, right? Like, you have, it's really used to, part of it is to solve problems. And that gave her the opportunity to solve the problem, but us to kind of facilitate it right away, right now. But we also get to cultivate that excitement in her for coding, because she's, like, really excited about it. She shows us her work. It's like, oh, okay, that's great. But if she had to wait like 5, 6, 7 years in a setting where there's a huge bureaucracy, where it's like, hey, we gotta come up with a formal plan, and what's the budget going to be? Like, you're losing kids in the meantime.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best things you can do as a parent is follow the interest of your child, mm-hmm. and then use that interest to teach them some of the things that you want them to learn. So, for instance, if you take right now, your daughter's interested in computer coding, which, by the way, kudos to you, because I recommend all families introduce coding to their children at age 3 because it is a language. So your daughter's interested in computer coding right now, and you're putting her in classes, which is phenomenal, and you're getting her, I'm sure, the apps and the computer programs or whatever, the books that she needs to learn to become a proficient coder. So what I would suggest you do is what I call motivation stacks. And this is an important concept that I think all parents really should focus on when it comes to their child's education. Is your daughter is intrinsically motivated by computer coding. Right now, coding, it's fun. It's something she wants to do. And she's learning about, she's building, I'm sure, computer programs with it or that type of thing, I would imagine. And then what you want to do is start to channel that intrinsic motivation and get her to the point where it's paired with extrinsic motivation. So right now, she might be, whatever, making a little website. So what you do is you start to just drop suggestions. You could do this, and then you get it to the point where she's actually produced a real world product. And then once she's produced a real world product, something that's valuable, you say, well, why don't you add an option to have a monthly subscription to this? And then she codes that in, and then, you start to tell friends and family about it. So obviously they're going to support her. She starts to see some people signing up for it, and she's like, wait a second here, I'm making money. This is great. It's very natural. It turns a child's natural interest into an entrepreneurial mindset. And what you see is children who start engaging in business at a much younger age. I mean, I know a 9-year-old who who took teddy bears and she started customizing people's names on them. Right, these teddy bears. She wanted to do this. Her mom had done that with shirts for a while, and Christmas was coming, and she was like, I like these teddy bears. I want to do this. So her mom said, okay. So she starts customizing people's names on it. They make a little Facebook page. Before you know it, all of her classmates are like, oh, I want one. So it's Christmas time. She's selling them to her classmates. The parents, they want one for every person in the family. So mom gets a bear, dad gets a bear, her friend gets a bear, their sibling gets a bear. Then she sends one overseas to her cousin, who's a veteran serving in the military.
Oh, okay.
Cousin loves it, said the guys at the barracks liked it. So, shit you not, 9 years old. Yeah. She sends some to the guys in the barracks. It's a big hit, so she starts sending more. Her mom suggests, hey, you like this? Why don't you write a letter to the local newspaper? And she writes a letter to the local newspaper. They love it. They send a reporter down. They do an interview with this 9-year-old. And a few weeks later, she was on the cover of the local newspaper, laying down, surrounded by all her customized bears or elves. I think it might have been elves.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. How long did it take her to get to that place?
She did all of this in a few months. Now, obviously, that's a grand success story. But the truth is, with our children, you don't need a grand success story.
Right.
Your daughter, for example, if she went that route and made a little subscription service, and a month later she has 5 people, who cares if they're your friends and family that you're like, hey man, make sure you support my daughter here. Yeah. She sees that, to her, this is like, wow, look at me, I'm crushing. And that's only going to motivate her to get more involved.
It's interesting because it's like, at the school they would have fundraisers or like readathons or jumpathons, things like that. So you would go and get sponsors for those types of events. But what you're talking about, that's kind of what I would like for them to do too. Right, it's like you get this immediate feedback, but you also get some monetary gain and you talk about the intrinsic and the extrinsic. It's like, yeah, like you get to reap a reward for all this effort that you're putting into it. That, yeah, it's not just this theoretical learning that we're doing here. It's like, hey, here's how you can create, but not only create, but now get it to market. And you know like this teddy bear business, that might not it's not going to be her I mean, it could be her one and only business, but more than likely it's like, okay, it'll run its course, and then she learns the lessons from the teddy bear business, and then gets the next idea, and now has a foundation or an idea of what to do, and go from there. And that's going to be a pretty powerful kid there. I mean, 9 years old to have that, but it also sounded like mom ran a business too, right? She had a shirt business.
Yeah, I mean, her mom wasn't doing anything crazy, but her mom had a little Facebook page, and she would make some customized shirts for whoever wanted them. And her daughter saw that, and there's something powerful about your children. That's why I always recommend to parents. I was like, you might be good at it, you might not be good at it, it might be clunker, whatever, but always just do something where you're self-modeling that you do business.
Yeah.
Because children, it's much like a seed. You plant that seed in their mind, and they start to think, "Oh, well, I can do this."
Yeah. Yeah, it's my daddy or it's my mommy, and they're doing it. So I do what they do. So I actually wanted to speak about that. So you wrote the children's book. What was like the inspiration for that, and what was the process of that? Because I think we need more people, and we're living in a time now where it's like you don't have to go to these big publishers, right, to get a book made. Like you got a book made, and it's a physical book, and it's a nice looking book. Can you kind of take us through your whole process with, good bears always tell the truth?
Yeah, well, I think that's a good a segue to a concept that I really push, and I recommend it strongly for all adults because I do a lot of things. But like, imagine I was a wooden ship, and I sailed off from New York, and I was making my way toward England. And on this wooden ship, I decided for no reason at all to bring just a ton of 2x4s. And as we started to sail along, part of my ship started to fall apart, and I fixed it with one of those 2x4s, and I decided I liked the way that looked, so I started ripping up some of the old wood and putting in the new pretty 2x4s. And by the time I got to England, I had replaced every piece of wood in the entire shit. Now, that's a ridiculous example, right? But
yeah.
It's the same boat, but it's a completely different boat.
Mm-hmm.
So I did on my YouTube channel about a year and a half ago. I told my channel, I was like, listen, I'm going to be going through some changes because I firmly believe that a person, if they don't almost completely reinvent themselves every 5 years, it's because they've stopped growing as a person. And I always try to grow. So my good bears always tell the truth.
Yeah.
Shameless plug. Ooh, look at that nice illustration. Shameless plug. So I'm always doing things. I'm always trying to. So anyway, heading into maybe September, October of 2019, I wrote a book about the pharmaceutical industry. Now, you might try to find that book, but you won't because I got spooked out. I never published it, and I'm currently trying to get it in the hands of people that could do good things with it. The world was quite different when I started writing that book versus when I finished writing that book. God does work in mysterious ways, and God willing, that book will make an impact. I'm trying. Promise. But anyway, so, you say, oh, this is a big failure. I wrote this whole book. I took it to an insurance company. I said, listen, farmers doing some stuff, and can I get an insurance policy in case they try to sue me for putting out the book? Because they don't care if it's a frivolous lawsuit or not. They told me they would need an attorney to read through the entire book and speak with them. And I was like, you know what? It's going to get into a place where if I want to do it and I want to have the proper safeguards that I would want in place, it's going to cost me a lot of money. So I said, all right, I'll shelve that for a little while, and I'll try to get into good hands, which I'm trying to do now. But you say, oh, so that's a big failure, Brett. You spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours for freaking a whole year almost, or half a year, 8 months, working on this book. You wrote this beautiful, in my opinion, masterpiece. And then you're shelving it. That's a failure. And I would tell them, no, that's not a failure. And I have proven that. Because I said, oh, well, yeah, I didn't do this, but what I did do is I learned a hell of a lot about the process of publishing books. Mm-hmm. So then I said, okay, well, I'm the education guy, and I'm always telling people that we need to build a better culture for our children. Mm-hmm. Well, what better way to tell people to build a better culture for our children than to just start doing it?
Right.
So I sat down one night, and I wrote, Good Bears Always Tell the Truth, in one night. I wrote this book, and I understood the process. So, basically, all I had to do was, I'm unfortunately not very good at art, so I had to find an illustrator. So I went to Fiverr.com. Plenty of extremely talented freelancers in many areas, graphic designers. If you're good at art, if you're good at these things, you should be on there because that's your road to entrepreneurship. I went on Fiverr. I hired a very talented artist, Masha Noir. She's in Russia. She's a young girl who I think one day I'll say I was blessed for the opportunity to work with her, how talented she is. When I first got, I basically begged her. She turned me down. I was like, all right. I came back to her one more time. She turned me down. And then I came back the next day. I said, all right, one more time. I promise I won't bother you again. And she said, you're very persistent. I said, Yes, I am. But I wanted to put out something high quality. I didn't want it. I wanted the best. And she's phenomenal. So she put the pictures together. We did a lot of collaboration about the details because I try to embed them within the book so that I want my book to, as children grow older, they can go back and read it and say, oh, there's a lot of messaging in here. Yeah. Messaging that maybe I didn't pick up when I was younger. That's why I tell people I try to write books for adults as much as children. They're supposed to reflect or mirror the real world back into the eyes of the reader. Yeah. And then from there, all you do is you go onto Amazon KDP, you create an account, you upload your files, and the book's ready to go. But that's stage one. I see a lot of people do that, and they're like, my books don't sell. From there, you got to get a little crafty. So what I did is I got something called Publisher Rocket, which I'm not affiliated with in any way, but they have a phenomenal service. I bought their thing for like $99. I own it now, their software. And basically, they have an algorithm that tracks all of the keywords that people search on Amazon. So with that, I was able to create a list of 1,000 keywords that people search when they're looking for children's books. So then I go into Amazon and I put the keywords that I want my book to pop up when people type in. I put all those keywords down, and now my book comes up when people type in whatever they type in into Amazon. And then there's more that gets into it. You got to write a book description. You got to figure out how to. People just write descriptions, but you want it to pop. So I had to figure out how to do it in coding, which it turned out Publisher Rocket had something for that too. You write your description, it puts it into coding format, you put it into Amazon, and then you get the bullet points and all the nice stuff. Yeah. And again, I don't want to kill you with the details, but the point is that once you start doing stuff in life, you start to develop a skill set that now things that you would have thought were out of your scope of possibility, say, oh wait, that doesn't look like a mountain, that looks like a little hill, and I could climb that.
Yeah. Because you have experience with it, and I think that was one of the main things that I wanted to speak to you about, because just that thought of, hey, the culture is antithetical to my beliefs, and it's not a culture that I want my kids to grow up in. I want to do something about it, and that's why I bought the book, because it was like, I want to support people who want to instill good values, and then from you to take that, it's like I want to speak to Brett about this, because I think this is really cool, and kudos to him for having the idea and then taking action and actually producing it. Because I've had millions of ideas in my head and don't take action on them, but you took action on them, and I was like, oh, this is great. And like speaking about like the culture, like I was a big hip hop fan, like in the '90s. Like that's when I grew up. But the messages weren't the best, right? Like it's just not the best messaging. But when Kanye came out with his Jesus is King album, it's like, wow, like this is incredible. Like here you have a guy who, comes from a culture that is, you know, not a godly culture, and he puts out this massive album, and like I still like listening to rap, but when my kids are in the car, I'm not listening to it. But it's like with this, it's like, oh, I could listen to this in the car with my kids, and it's something that I feel is gonna build them up to, what I want, just godly, good kids. And you're doing this, you're doing the same thing. You're like, hey, you have your little piece of what you're able to do, and like, hey, I'm producing a book. Like, what was the timeline? Because you said like you obviously it was the first book that helped you with the experience with the second book. But once you had the second book, you wrote it. You said it took you a night. How long was the timeline from finished product to actually like, hey, it's listed to go on Amazon, it's ready to sell?
Yeah, it took me about 2.5 months from
Okay.
the night I first had the idea to getting it published. And,
That's fast, man.
And I encourage everyone to say, oh, there's these big hurdles, but they can do things like that. And not only can they do things like that, I don't believe in scarcity. Like, if you told me in 2 months, you're like, hey, Brett, after we had our talk, I had this great idea for a children's book, and I just released it. Not only would I be pumped about it, but I would actively promote it through Classical Learner, because we need to build a culture and realize that there are tens of millions of people out there. There is no scarcity who are thirsty for a wholesome culture that we can raise our children.
Yeah. It sounds like you're the same way. I'm kind of the same way. Like, I want, like, we watch the old Disney movies, right? Like Jungle Book, Sleeping Beauty. That's why I prefer my kids to watch Sword in the Stone. When we read books, like we have like their Bibles that they read, but I also want them to read other things too. But I want them to be, strengthening the culture that I want. And I think that it's important, like you said, like it's encouraging other people, like, hey, they have these ideas to help. Hey, you have a book in you, write the book, and so, and they're able to get a hold of you at Classical Learner to help facilitate that.
Yeah, and I gotta say, Joel, you're a very impressive guy yourself. You're a Christian, you're a father, you're a husband, you homeschool, which, in my opinion, people that homeschool are heroes to this nation, because I know that your children are going to grow up with good values, and that's going to make the world my child grows up in a much safer and better place. You started this podcast, which I think is very impressive. So there's so many people out there doing amazing things, and my message to anyone out there listening is that join the party, because not only are there people out there doing amazing things, but you yourself, you have abilities, and we will support you. I want you. That's the difference between people, moral people with children versus the atheist who wants to dumpster pump all day. Is that I need the culture to get better, because I won't always be here, and I need my son to have strength around him.
Right. Yeah. Like, I didn't know you. I didn't have a conversation with you, but I read about the book, and it came up on my timeline for some reason. Somebody else that I followed, and they were like, "Hey, check this book out." And I'm always looking for stuff for my kids, like I don't know if that's all parents, but I'm always looking for stuff for my kids. And I saw that and I read the description. I think you did like a little YouTube video where you were reading the story. It's like, oh great, like I want to support this because I know what you're trying to do. Right? Like I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to build the culture. And that's what I want too. I want a culture where it's not just my kids, but we have other kids who just want to be, you know, I'm a Christian, so like that's where I come from. I don't need everybody around me to be a Christian, but it's like, hey, let's be good to each other, right? Like, let's be good to each other where we can be good neighbors. If you need help, like that, I can help you, and you can help me. Like, let's build that culture where we tell the truth, right? I'm not trying to get over on you, and you're not trying to get over on me. Like, let's build that culture. And I think, writing books is a big part of that. Like, these things stick with kids.
Yeah, and I do. It is a life objective of mine to spread the light of Christ. I pray every night that Christ can use me as a vessel to spread His light, first to my wife, to my child,
Mm-hmm.
and to everyone around them in the world. And I think the best way to do that is not to preach, but to be a living example. So
Mm-hmm.
I credit my coming to Jesus, so to speak, with a lot of the success in my life. That I have a wife and I have a child. That 2020, a lot of people, like, you see suicide rates. I looked at my wife the other
Mm-hmm.
day. I said, "This year has been great," and she looked right
Mm-hmm.
back at me, no hesitation, and said, "This year has been great. Let's bring another child into the world."
Mm-hmm.
Because we're going to crush, because we're going to live morally. We're going to try to live within our means. We're going to be kind to our neighbors, try to help people, try to build community, and try to do your best. Not that any of us could ever reach that glory, but to live our life as Jesus is the goal.
Right.
I want to be able to look Jesus in the eyes one day, so to speak. And if I'm asked about it, say, obviously I am so fallen, but I did my best that I thought I could do to try to live up to that pedestal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really it's really it, right? It's finding. It's like, God, you put me here on this earth for a reason. It's my responsibility to figure out what it is, and then to go and do it. Right? So it's really that simple.
And people see that. People,
Yeah.
I find, like, people have experiences. Like, they have experiences with the devil. So maybe they went to Catholic school. Maybe there was a pedophile priest. Maybe there was, hopefully, something not that terrible, but it's a real
Mm-hmm.
thing. And their experience with what they perceive to be with God is very negative. And because of that and their conditioning in school, they say, well, this stuff is no good. This stuff is for kooks. But
Yeah.
um, when you open your heart up and really you look inside, you will find that God is connected to all of us in our
Mm-hmm.
souls, and that once you accept that, it starts to empower you in ways that, for me, in ways that I wouldn't have thought possible before that, because there's a divinity to it. There's a we are the creation of the Creator, and we have
Right.
that within us.
Yeah. We were made to create, and that's something that I'm kind of getting, like, that idea is I'm starting to grasp. It's like, yeah, my God was a creator. I'm made in His image, so you should create, right? Like, you were made to create. You got to figure out what it is that you create, not just take in, take in, take in. I was thinking about there was like this analogy about the Dead Sea, right? The Dead Sea takes in, but there's no outlets to the Dead Sea, so there's no life there. It has to give. There has to be some kind of a outlet for the water to come out, because if not, it makes, I don't know if it's like whatever the saline levels or the salt levels, and they're just too high for. But like that's us, right? Like, if all we do is take in, take in, take in, and there's no giving or creation, then there's no life there.
Yeah, I mean, look at these digits. I mean, God didn't. give us these hands and these thumbs and this mind, so that we could watch porn all day. That's what a lot of people think, and that's what they do. It's disgusting. No, he gave us this ability so that we can access our higher mind and build a better world. And I mean, you're like Jesus. Jesus washed the feet of the people around him.
Mm-hmm.
He took care of the sick, and that's what we're here to do. And we have the capability now with all of the technology and everything that is around us to reach more people than ever before. And it's a shame for people who limit themselves and don't try to do that.
Yeah. Well, but I think a lot of it though is just the the schooling. Like I know very much now looking back that I was, my parents weren't entrepreneurial parents. They worked jobs. I still work a job, but if I look at all my schooling, I was trained to be an employee, right? Like I never started a business or like had any idea of even starting my own business or owning my own business all through my K through 12, and even in college. It wasn't until I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which some people feel like it's like trite, like it's cliche, like hey, that's dumb, but like if you've never had any experience with reading something like that, it's like a revelation.
So perhaps they don't understand it.
Yeah, maybe, or like I'll see people who are like, oh yeah, you read Rich Dad Poor Dad one time, like good for you. It's like, no man, you don't understand. Like I had no clue. And when it might be a thing too. Like I was already in my 20s when I read it, and then so it might be one of those things where it's like, I still look in the mirror and think that I'm like 16. It's like, no, you're not. You're not. Like you're pushing 40 now, and like now people know about it, and so they get it earlier, so they kind of take it for granted. But for me, it was like, oh, that was a big shift in me that kind of started me looking for other things to change, right? Like it was a definitive point for me where it's like I didn't even know stuff like this existed, and now I want more because I wanted to learn. But now it's because this was 15 so or more years ago, whereas like now maybe I'm starting to get some of the fruits from it because I tried other things too, but now I think it might be starting to stick where I'm creating, because like I would never have thought I would do something like this before. I like talking to people. Like I think people are very interesting. I think I want to give people the opportunity to tell their stories. Like that's really what I want, and I want to glorify God. Like those are my things.
Yeah,
but I would never have thought of it. Go ahead.
Yeah, they keep us in a state of extended adolescence. I'm glad you brought that up. I find it very interesting that a lot of my friends that I grew up with, when I have conversations with them, I don't mean this to bag on them. If you guys are listening, I absolutely love every one of you. You're by no means perfect, but I'll be having a conversation with them, and they'll say something like, "I was talking to this kid," but they're talking about a grown man, and to me, I see that people are so stuck in the mindset of adolescence that it's delaying it to the point where they never really grow up, which is a very interesting paradigm. You were just talking about Rich Dad Poor Dad. I was at a party last night, 55th birthday party for my mother-in-law, and I was speaking to this person I recently met. He's from Brazil. He moved here when he was 17 years old. He didn't have a penny in his pocket. Now he's 25 years old, and he's a success story. But here's where Rich Dad Poor Dad comes in, and it's very fascinating. So he was telling me that he started his gym. He started a jiu-jitsu gym. He purchased a clunker, just a space. The walls falling apart. Every
Yeah.
night he ripped it down, stripped it naked, built it back up, and laid all the tiles, put all the sheetrock, did everything. And he had to have X amount of clients to break even by X amount of time, or he was in trouble.
Yeah.
And he was able to do that. It's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And a lot of people, you see, even when they start businesses, will stop there. That they have their business now, and they're going to spend the next 40 years putting in that sweat equity on the ground, literally grappling on the ground, training.
Yeah.
This is a very impressive man. So he was telling me what he plans to do moving forward. That because he built everything from the ground level and went through that, he kept the documents of everything, the cost of everything, the materials, the marketing strategy, everything he did. He has documents, computer files, as well as paper. And his plan now is, sometime in the next year, to put that all together and actually offer it up as a franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And what he said to me is he wants to sell it for low. He'll help people set up their franchise for a couple of $1,000s, like $2,000. Right. And then after that, his objective would be to get them to pay him $500 a month for the franchise. Mm-hmm. And, what he explained to me is like, and, this is a concept I try to employ as well, is that all it takes is 100 franchises or clients at $500 a month. And what is that? Is that $50,000 a year? A month? I'm sorry? $50,000 a month?
Yeah, something like that.
500 times dollars times 100? Yes, $50,000 a month. And you say, well, that goal's not that far from obtaining. You get 100 franchises? You can do that.
Yeah.
At a low cost, right? Someone like you, ex-football player, wants to start a gym, But that's what, he never read it, but that's what Rich Dad Poor Dad actually teaches. Mm-hmm. That once he sets up that franchise, he doesn't necessarily have to put in the sweat equity. I mean, he will, he's a hardworking man, but it becomes just the marketing of it and the accounting of it, and now he has this passive income, right, of these franchises that he created an asset, he franchised that asset out, and now that asset brings him money. And what that does is it frees up your time so you can work on the things you want to work on, create the things you want to create. And that's what Rich Dad Poor Dad actually teaches. So it's about freeing up your life so that you have the financial stability to live the life you really want to live. So anyone that would criticize that, I would say, simply doesn't understand the message that it pushes.
It's interesting too, though, just listening to that story, is it really kind of started off of one skill, right? Like I know Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? Like one thing, and that one thing has gotten him into a place where now he's talking about franchising. Like that to me is incredible. And like for me, that's always what I've thought about. Like what is my one thing? And that's I don't know. It never really came to me. But it's like, you know what? I like talking to people, so let's do this and kind of see where this goes. But for you, it's education and writing books, like, man, that's incredible. Like, yeah, let's push that. Let's encourage that, because I don't know where it could lead for you, but I'm hoping it leads to a place where you're really successful and you're able to be with your family and be with your babies. Like, that's awesome, right? Like that's the dream. And babies are free.
Yeah, and the thing is, when you start doing things, you realize what you missed, and you're able to make the little adjustments over time that makes what you're doing more effective. And I'll give you an example. I published the book, and after you publish, you realize that the reviews are very important. By the way, if you could write a review, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The reviews are very important because what happens is people click on the book and they scroll down to the description and the reviews. And if they see a lot of good reviews, they're much more likely to purchase that. But getting reviews could be a little bit difficult. So with each one of my books, I offer a free lesson plan that's downloadable at www.classicallearner.com.
Mm-hmm.
So people have been downloading the lesson plan and doing it. If you haven't, well, I hope you do. So I'm making the second book now, and I was like, all right, well, I need to make sure I get more reviews. Well, I just completed the lesson plan for that book, and all I did was at the bottom of that lesson plan, I just put a little note. Please write a review on Amazon. It really helps.
Mm-hmm.
So now, every person that gets my second book in the Cubs and Bears series downloads the lesson plan, does this full lesson plan with their child. After they do all that, at the bottom, they're going to say, please write a review on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this person purchased my book, read my book with their child, liked it enough that they downloaded the lesson plan, did the lesson plan, which is fire, and they're going to love.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course they're going to write a review, and not only are they going to write a review, but they'll write a good one.
Right.
So now I know how to do that. But when I wrote the first book, I was like, get reviews. I was like, I don't know. I just ask people.
Yeah. Well, I think your boat analogy is really the story of entrepreneurship, right? Like, you're going out and you're heading out, and the boat you arrive in isn't the same boat that you left in, because it changes you. Like, you have to learn new things, and the ideas that you had, like when that boat leaves the dock, of what you need or you think you're going to need, changes as you go through some storms and rough weather and good weather. It's like, okay, I gotta change these. I gotta change this out and put this in, and just to get to your destination. And then, once you've gone and traveled it, now you're like, oh, I know what I need now for the journey back home, or to take that journey again. So these are some systems that I'm going to put in place, so it makes it a much more, I don't know if a faster journey, but just a better journey for you. So kudos to you, man, because I'm sure there's a ton of lessons that you learned. I mean, and even in the design aspect of it, right? It's like where you're going to go. I'm making an assumption, but where to go to get your artwork. What the layouts are looking like. How long have you been working on this second book? I'm assuming that was probably going to be your main not obstacle, but that's where you're going to put most of your time in, is actually writing it, because it sounds like the process, you've kind of been through it, so that speed will probably pick up a little bit.
Yeah, well, I already have the script for the third book done.
For
the second book, my illustrator is I have about I think it's a children's book. I think she has about 5 or 6 more pages to get done. So I'm hoping to get that published sometime late September, early October.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we're already in September. I forget that we're already in September. So you're talking just a few weeks away.
Yeah, I like the way you framed it. Too, going back to the boat analogy, a lot of what we're talking about is experience. That as you start to do things, you gain experience, and that is probably the greatest teacher in life, right? It's like knowledge. It's one thing you hear something and you have knowledge, but when you experience it, you have wisdom. And it's like, all right, so I said my book comes with a lesson plan, right? The Good Bears Always Tell the Truth lesson plan. It basically breaks down like this. The children read the book, and then you download the lesson plan, and it basically says, look, just take 8 to 10 pieces of computer paper, fold it in half, staple them together, color pencils, crayons, whatever it might be. So now you're ready to write a book. Then I want you to have your child sit down with them, and do brainstorming. So you're going to organize the book. What do you want the book to start with? What do you want the book to end with? What's the ending message? And then put in the middle details that you'll include that will get you from the start point to the end point. So it's just teaching children to organize. Then they go down, they write a script, they put it onto the paper, they draw the pictures. And then from there, this is what I really like about the lesson, is I suggest that parents have them do a book reveal party. And in order to do that, what I suggest they do is create invitations. Now, they can do that in a variety of ways. They can make them. They could do one of the online portals that let you just send invitations via email to friends and family. But have them invite friends and family. This is a lesson for little kids. So you invite them to your book reveal. So they come over at X date, and you've had your child organize this whole thing and set up the room and present the book, read the book to friends and family. And then I encourage there to be photocopies of the book on site, available for sale for maybe $1, doesn't matter.
I love it, man. This is so cool.
Yeah, and now what happens is the people that are at this book reveal, of course they're going to buy the book. Give me a break. You better buy a book if you're in my house, right. All right? To support my child. But what that's really doing is that's giving your child wisdom. Experience. Okay, this is what marketing is. This is what sales is. And, oh, wow, this is money. This is extrinsic motivation. And, from there, there's different ways you can teach them about handling the money. But the point is that you're giving them a life experience that...
That's an awesome lesson, man. That's awesome. That is really so... Yeah. Like, that's just... But that's like a fun thing, too, right? It's like, hey, you got to create this thing, and then now we're going to have a party. And, like, my kids love parties. They like having get-togethers. They like inviting people over. And, I don't know if they really like the center of attention part of it, but that's something that they're going to need to get over, right? Especially now. Like, they talk about, like, presentation skills and all these things. Like, those are really important skills to have, is to be able to speak to a crowd or speak in public. But like that's a huge thing. Man, that's such a great idea, Brett. We're gonna have to do that. I'm gonna talk to my wife about that, because my kids are different, right? Like you'll see as you have more kids. But like, I have a kid that I'm like they would eat this idea up and probably do a couple of them. That's such a good idea, man. I can't tell you how cool that is.
Yeah, public speaking with children, it falls under the same umbrella of everything we've spoken about here. I remember when I first made videos on YouTube. I broke onto the scene. I had never done anything like it before, and it was 2016, and I made an 8-part documentary series. Just decided to do it about the murder of Seth Rich. As a familiar DNC staffer, allegedly leaked the Podesta emails to WikiLeaks. So I made an 8-part documentary about his death, and just by chance, I guess it was a hot topic. It got thousands and thousands of views. I was like, oh, this is easy. It wasn't always like that. It was just by chance. But I remember when I started doing it, talking in front of a camera, like doing this would have been painful for me. I couldn't say anonymous, and it bothered me.
Yeah.
Now I just make fun of myself with stuff. But and I've given speeches now in front of hundreds of people, whether it be at an event or my grandmother's funeral or the best man at my buddy's wedding, and in which I was pretty much just completely comfortable. And if you would have saw me 8 or 9 years back, I mean, I like profusely sweating just giving a little presentation in front of my classmates in school.
Yeah. No, because I was gonna ask, the children's book stuff. Like, to me, my writing is really intimate. Like these are my thoughts, and you get to literally like see my thoughts and my thought process as I put them down on paper. And so I've always been like, I don't want you to see that, because I don't think it's good enough, right? Like I don't think it's good enough. So I'm not gonna put it out there. But you had this idea, you wrote it down, and you put it. Was there any kind of trepidation for you? Because you know, I'm not a writer. I'm not a really a creative type either for the most part. So when I see people do this, it's like, man, that's really cool that you have, because like I think of like artists, like you have to be really confident, right? To like, hey, I created this thing and I'm gonna put it out there. That's what I think of artists anyway. Like musicians, writers, things like that. It's like, man, these people are really courageous. They create this thing and they put it out in the world, and then the world's gonna judge it. And you know, have you always been like really that confident? Like, was there any kind of trepidation for you, or was it kind of like, hey, I started off with these videos and I created this thing, and that kind of helped your step ladder of confidence, so to speak?
I always hark back to, God created the world and it was good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my internal world, I know I'm good. So I
Mm-hmm.
created something and I know it's good. And people might not
Yeah.
like it, but
Yeah.
it's moral and it's wholesome
Mm-hmm.
and it's a message that I think should be in the world. So, yeah, there's going to be people out there that probably read my work and say, this guy can't formulate a cogent thought, but I don't care about them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here for the people that, because there's millions of people that
Right.
will take a look at my work and say, I really appreciate this person's mind. And that's the same thing with you. You take a big leap. You say, I'm going to start a podcast, right? You get the looks. You're going to start a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to give me that look because that's so motivating to me.
Mm-hmm.
Please do.
Yeah. For me, it's just like I like doing this, man. Like I don't think that me and you would have ever really talked before, and it gives me a place to be like, hey, like I think this guy's got some interesting things to talk about. You're obviously opinionated, and I like talking to opinionated people. I'm opinionated. But I also want people to be able to explain themselves, right? Like not be like sound bites kind of thing. Like, hey, let's just talk like normal people, like me and you met at a party, and let's talk like that. But also not having to have like the small talk part of it. It's like, hey, let's just talk like just two normal guys, right? Or just two normal people. Like that's kind of what I wanted to give the space for. Like let's just talk. I think there's not enough talking that goes on, be it that we're very rushed and scheduled, or just that people don't really want to say what they think anymore. And I think that's dangerous. I think I think a lot of things, and that's what I wanted to do here. It's like, hey, this guy created a book. I think it's great that he's creating, and I think he's providing a message that I think is good. Let's not that this is big or anything, but like, hey, I just want to support people. Like I want to help build people. I want to help let's just talk. I mean, I mean, I would never have like called you up and just like talk, but it's like, hey, this gives us a place to where you get a benefit, hopefully too, where it's like, hey, more people will buy your book. I hope thousands and millions of people will buy your book.
I love the concept of build, and you take your podcast. You're building it, and it's infinitely more valuable than anything that Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or ABC or CBS or any of these big multinational corporations could produce. Because when people tune in to these programs and they turn them on, they're getting, as you said, very short sound bites. So they might have a conversation about education, and they'll have two shills receiving funding from probably the same side. Mm-hmm. And one of them will say, we really need to cut education funding and save some tax money. And you'll get the other guy, how can you say that? How dare you? You don't care about the children. You don't want them to have education. Are they going to be successful in life? What do you have to say to that mother? And cut to commercial. Take generic drug. Taking it will lead to your legs falling off, and you may have a stroke and die immediately. But CNN is getting paid millions and millions of dollars by our pharmaceutical company. So we're going to push these drugs on you and promote that you send your children to public school. And people watch that garbage. And then some of the same people that watch that garbage would look at you and say, Joel, you're starting a podcast? Oh, I'm going to laugh at you. There is a lack of awareness from all of the conditioning that it's really astonishing. And when you talk about building, and I see what you're doing, it's exactly what the world needs. So just keep it up, and you're crushing.
So thanks, man. I mean, it's all new to me. I'm not trying to be anybody. I'm just a regular guy, right? Like, I thought about it. Like, you have like these titans, right? Guys like Steve Jobs or like Warren Buffett's big. They did some big things. And I thought about what I wanted for me. Like, what is the greatest thing that I'm going to do? Well, for me, it's like I'm a husband and a father. Like, those are there you go.
Thanks, Brady. It's my boy.
Yeah, he brought you a note.
Brady, this is beautiful, yeah. Papa. Oh, you want to take it back to mommy? Can you shut the door on the way out? Love you.
Awesome. And that's what it is for me. It's like, how can I be the best husband, and how can I be the best father? I'm not a guy who's pulling down 6-figure months, driving Lambos. Like, if I had my dream car, it'd be like the 18 van. Like, that'd be like the car that I get. Like, everybody hop in the van. Like, I'm not impressed. Not that I'm not impressed, but that's not what I'm chasing. I'm not chasing that stuff. Like, I just want people to be good to each other.
Yeah, well, that's like the trap of materialism. One of the things I really promote to young people, and to me, it's biblical. It's that you have to have an idea in your mind of enough. Because if you get caught up in the world of materialism, like I'm like you, I don't want the fancy car. Then no matter what you do, you're always chasing money. And what a sad... if you look back in your life and say, what did you do with it? I spent it chasing money. No, I want real wealth. I want... next few years, my wife and I will be getting a farm. Right now we live in Long Island. I want real wealth. I want a big family with lots of children running around, and a wife that loves me, and chickens that lay eggs, and to grow our own food, and to enjoy my time in this world with people that really matter, doing things that really matter, taking care of the people I love. Which is the complete opposite of the materialistic bull that they push on us in every television commercial.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Like, I'd love a big house. Like, I'm not a car guy, but I'm a house guy. So I'd really like a big house. And like, now with all the shutdowns and everything, I was like, man, I really should have bought a bigger house. But I didn't know we were gonna have so many kids, because I have 4 of them. I didn't know we were gonna have so many kids, and now it's like, oh, I'd like to have like a home gym and like a play area, and now we're homeschooling, so like there's all that. But it's funny that you mentioned the farm stuff. I spoke to a guy a few weeks ago, Brandon Goswick. He's down in Texas, and he's got 80 acres down there in Texas, man.
Oh, it's amazing.
He's got his spot, and I guess his either his parents or his in-laws live on that same property, and they're just building down there. I'm like, oh man, that sounds really cool. But like, this is something, like, I'm a city guy. I mean, maybe not quite like, Long Island, but I grew up with shopping centers and going to school, and like going to the movies and going to the mall. Like I've never gone hunting before. I've never, uh, I fished for the first time, like this year, and like I'm trying to show my kids that stuff because it's like I didn't, we didn't fish as kids, so it's like I don't know what I'm doing. Like if you get me like on the football field, like okay, I know what stuff is supposed to be like, but get me out there, and it's like, but that's like real living. Like I spend a lot of my time on my studies and sports, and I'm grateful for that. But I really wish that I would have learned about more outdoors type stuff, and that's what I want for my kids. So like I bought them fishing rods and stuff, and I don't even really know how to like hook it up. Like I don't know what I'm doing. I was watching like YouTube videos, and it's like, okay, let's go out there and let's just let you throw your line out there and figure it out. And that might be embarrassing because it's like I'm not a country boy. It's like they know that stuff because like they grew up with that stuff, or But for me, it's like, okay, this is I'm out of my comfort zone right now, but we're gonna do it because like you said earlier, modeling it, and even if your kids don't know, like, all right, like dad doesn't really know what he's doing. It's like, where's grandpa at? I'll have grandpa come out here and help me.
Yeah, I'll send you a video of my 2-year-old reeling in a fish.
Oh, you took him out fishing already?
Yeah, he caught one. He was really
nice,
really cool. Do you have a garden?
No, it's really hot here, man. Like we're in triple digits, so like I don't know if it would even take because it gets scorched.
Do me a favor. Go online, order heirloom lettuce seeds. Take the seed, make sure it's heirloom. Take the seed, plant it, just put it in your windowsill, water it once a day, and as it starts to grow, it will fundamentally alter your perception of life, God, everything around you, because it is spread the garden. You start with a seed. I'm going to talk to you in 12 months. You're going to be like, Brett, I'm getting a farm too.
Oh, I mean, I like the idea of it. Like that to me is really intriguing. Like my wife was telling me that one of her friends bought some cows and like, hey, you want to buy like a side of beef, and it was like 150 pounds of beef, and I was like, oh, that sounds awesome, but it's like I don't have the space for it. Like I have to get like a freezer, and it's like, oh, that sounds really cool because I want I don't know if the animal that I'm eating is healthy, right? Like I don't know if they were pumped up with all kinds of chemicals or whatever, but this is just like her friend who has a farm, and I could see like, hey, they're feeding them just hay, and the cows walks around, and when it's time to get slaughtered, it's like, hey, this is a animal that wasn't on anything crazy. Same idea, like of like hunting. Have you ever hunted before?
I haven't hunted.
Like who was I watching? It's like on Netflix. The guy goes out, a meat eater, Steve Barnella or something like that, and he goes out and he goes hunting. It's like, man, that seems like it'd be really cool to be able to experience something like that. And that's definitely a healthy animal, right? It's out being chased by predators or whatever and having to run around. It's like that's a healthy animal. I think that'd be something that's good to eat. But just the experience of it too. It's like, oh, that's we're talking about education, right? That's part of it. It's like, where does your food come from? Like, it's not normal to go into a store and buy your food that's already prepackaged and slaughtered, and you're totally disconnected from the whole process of where your food comes from. Like this is new within the last really like 100 years. For all the centuries before that, like your ancestors, they had to go out and hunt, and you're disconnected from that. And I guess maybe you could say that there's issues that arise from that, right? Like all these anxiety things, and we're disconnected from nature. We're inside all the time. Where it's like this could help. This could be a thing where it's like this helps you just to learn in a different way that we don't consider quote unquote educational, right, Brett?
Yeah, well, my first garden, I planted everything, and It took a really long time to grow, and the plants really didn't come in as green and vibrant as I would have imagined they were going to be when I started. And what I realized, I've gotten better each year. On my third year, I have a very serious garden now. That the problem was the soil. So what I was seeing was the yellowing of the leaves and or the plant dying on the top. The problem wasn't on the top. The problem was actually below in the soil, because my plants are what they eat, and what they eat is that soil and that biodiversity within the soil. So, like this year, I came back and I really spent a lot of time nurturing the soil before I planted anything, and then I planted the garden and everything. Boom, green and beautiful, and not one chemical has ever touched my soil. And just as my plants are what they eat, the soil, I am what I eat, them.
Right.
So if they're healthy, I'm healthy. If soil's healthy, they're healthy. And you start to understand where your food comes from. So when the average person goes into the grocery store and they buy that meat, they buy that cow meat, what are they really eating? Because that cow is fed genetically modified food that has been stripped completely of all its nutritious value. In fact, usually the way they genetically modify the food is they splice the genes open and they inject it with this unique type of mold that when you spray chemicals on this mold, when you spray Roundup on the mold keeps growing. But everything else in nature, if you spray the Roundup on it, it kills it. That's why it kills the bugs, they can't eat it. So now you have these genetically modified fruit crops, and you spray this Roundup on it that kills biodiversity. It kills biological beings. A fly comes across Roundup, and they die. So then they take this food with this genetically modified monster with Roundup sprayed on it, and they feed it to your cows, who they have in a very unnatural environment because they have to have all these cows in this tight space, so they're standing in their own fecal matter. And because of that, they're getting sick constantly. So the way they prevent that is they partner with the big pharmaceutical industries. And big pharma makes more money selling antibiotics to these big commercial farms for cows than they do for people. And we know how much money they make for people. So these cows, their whole life, are injected with antibiotics. So then they kill the cow. They stuff it with preservatives because they have to ship it across the country to get it to a grocery store without it going bad. And then it's sitting in the grocery store with preservatives, antibiotics, genetically modified organisms, and Roundup. And you're going to take it home and cook it. And then people say, well, shit, I'm afraid of coronavirus. I might get sick.
All right, but here's the big question though: does the stuff you grow in your garden, does it taste better?
Worlds better. I wish if I could just take one of my garden tomatoes, throw it through the screen. Oh man, you'd be a happy guy.
Because when it all comes down to it, like I want all the nutritional benefits and all that, but does it taste good?
If you haven't had a cherry tomato off of a vine, you've never even had a tomato. You probably think tomatoes aren't that good. Yeah. Oh, if you have a cherry tomato right off the vine, it tastes like fruit.
You know what? We had a friend that they had their own garden, and I think they had beets, and I don't like beets. Like they're nasty. They're like chewing up dirt.
Yeah.
But she gave us some of her beets out of her home garden, and they were delicious. It was pretty tasty. It's like, okay, I could eat this. Like I'm not an unhealthy eater, but if it's up to me, I'd be eating like sandwiches all the time. Like thank God for my wife. Like it's just easy to make, and I don't want to be hungry. It's something that's tastes all right, but like she'll mix all the vegetables and stuff. It's like, oh, but if you brought beets in, it's like, no, I'm not gonna eat that stuff. But the ones that were homegrown, it's like, oh, that was pretty good, man.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that about beets either. Now I'm super motivated. I'm gonna go get some beet seeds
Yeah.
now.
If you like the home gardening, I mean, I don't know what kind of temperature they need. Like, I don't understand any of that stuff, but I do know that the ones that she grew, they were really good.
Yeah, I'm big into to spreading gardening, especially with
Mm-hmm.
pending food shortages coming, and just if people have food security, you're a lot safer. And
Mm-hmm.
the same thing with if you have community, like people like I'm the biggest advocate of guns, as you can tell from this conversation. But the truth is, the best way to achieve security is to trust and have relationships with all of your neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And so last week, what me and my 2-year-old did was we filled up 50 little containers with dirt, and we planted lettuce seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And I posted pictures of this on my Twitter.
Yeah,
And
I saw that. That was really cool.
so 49 of my 50 containers sprouted lettuce. It's an amazing crop. And what we're going to do later today is me and my 2-year-old are going to walk around the block, and we're going to drop off freshly sprouted lettuce to all of our neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is it builds community, so that when shit hits the fan, my neighbors say, "Who, that guy? You mean the guy that brought me the lettuce? No, he's a cool guy. Let's
Yeah.
not loot his house and let
Right.
bands of psychopaths come in and kill him."
Yeah.
Right? And it also it plants a seed in their mind, like I said to you with the lettuce, that oh wait, growing food is this is something we've done for all of human history, something that has been not something we don't do, something that has and by design culturally been taken from us.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to spread the culture of taking that back.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea too. It's just, it's an excuse to go and knock on your neighbor's door, right? It's like, hey, I grew some lettuce and it was really fun for me to do. Here's one for you. I'm Brett, by the way, or I'm Joel, by the way. I'm a couple houses down. Don't drive too fast down the street because my kids, play on the street. Have a nice day. Now they know you. Like I'm the guy. I sit outside when my kids are playing. I wave to all the cars. So this is a wave to all the cars. Part of it is just so they see me, so they don't, they know that there's an adult around, but they don't drive too fast. Part of it is just like, hey, I like being neighborly. Like, it's a pretty simple thing to do. I think it's just one of those things that be okay, man, just be nice to the people around you. Like, I think that goes, a way of, it, maybe it's not as concrete a step as like what you do with, actually knocking on the door, but hopefully they recognize me. It's like, hey, this guy right over here. Like, oh, you know what? I saw I waved to everybody in the mailbox. Is like pretty close to my house. And then so, people will come by because there's the community mailbox by my house. So I wave to everybody. And my kids are out there playing on the street. This guy who kind of lives, a few houses down, but wouldn't really see my kids. He had this antique shop, and he was closing it down. This was like a year ago. But he had this big old dollhouse. And he drives up one day. He's like, "Hey, I see you're out here with your kids. Here's this dollhouse." And it's like, this is a nice, like an old, like antique dollhouse, and you're made out of wood and everything. It's like, oh wow, like this is really cool. Like I'm trying to show my kids, like, hey, you're not that the end goal is to get stuff, but for your kids to see, like, hey, if be good to people. Like sometimes nice things happen, and like this man who doesn't even know your names, but we're out here, we wave to people, and we try to be good to people. This guy thought of you, and he brought you this dollhouse. Like, remember this stuff. Like, just when you can't be good to people, be good to people.
Now imagine a few months from now there's more lockdowns, and the government comes in and they tell this man, you have to shut down your business. And he's already hurting from the first time they shut it down, and he says, listen, if I shut down this business this time, I'm going out. This is my life's work. This is my livelihood. This is how I feed my family. And he stays open, and the government comes in and they do what they do, and they try to levy fines.
Mm-hmm.
He, there's no question, would have a loyal ally in you. Would you take a time to write a letter to the local government? Would you maybe even, if there was a little protest, go down there and say, this man needs to keep his business open, and this is good for the community, and you're hurting the community, and he's a positive. And so it's like, by being good, love thy neighbor. This stuff's all biblical. That it's the Bible is telling you how to flourish, how to build a nation, how to have a culture that protects you from this big beast system. Same thing with the lettuce. If the food shortages really come, and I think it's more of a nutrition shortage than I don't think there'll be. I think people will starve to death fat, if that makes sense.
No, I know what you mean.
But if there are food shortages, you plant a seed with the lettuce, but that's when the lettuce guy comes around again and says, stop panicking. I've been growing food, and I'm going to keep growing food, and here's what we're going to do. I'm going to come by every one of your houses, and I'm going to come with seeds, and I'm going to show you how to grow this food. And I'll go to my neighbor, and I'll say, you're going to do tomatoes. And in every window in their house, we'll plant tomato bush, or bush, vines, whatever. And you take care of that. I go to my next neighbor. I say, you do eggplants. I'll show you how to do it. And then I have this now where everyone in society is panicking and they're attacking each other and eating each other. I have a whole block of people that are probably closer than they've ever been because you plant seeds.
Well, and for me, it's like I'm always looking for projects to do with my kids, but there's always well, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I could imagine that you knock on someone's door, and they have young kids. It's like, hey, like here's this project that you're gonna do. Like you've made a friend already, and then it's like, oh, okay, like I can help you set up your garden. It's like, oh, that'd be great. And now you go from not even a friend, you've made an acquaintance, right? You knock on the door, you make an acquaintance. But then if you were to go over and help them set up their garden, it's like, oh, you've made a friend, because if you're able to help them and their kids, like I always think about, like, if you do something nice for me, that's well and good. But if you really want my favor, you do something good for my kids. Like, so here's a quick story. My daughter, she was on a field trip, and something happened where like kids started ganging up against her. Okay, but there was this one boy who stood up to all the other boys. For my like my daughter was crying, and he stood in front of my daughter, and he started yelling back and fighting back the other boys. Guess what? When that little boy had a party, I went to that party. It's like, oh, this is the boy that stood up for my daughter. Yeah, I'm going to this kid's party. And normally, like my kids have a lot of friends, and there's like a $10 limit or whatever for gifts. But it's like, oh no, for this boy, we're gonna spend more money for this boy. And oh, hey baby, I'm going to Cold Stone. I'm gonna buy a gift card for Cold Stone. You go and give it to this boy, because this is a good friend. Like this is a good boy. You go give him that, and you say that my daddy says thank you. So like going back to like the whole lettuce thing, it's like, yeah, you do this thing for my kids. It's like I don't know if that's all parents. I don't know if that's just me, but I think of like a good parent. It's like you do something for my kids. It's like, oh, yeah. I don't even know if I think highly more of you, but it's like, oh yeah, I appreciate that, and I'm not going to forget that you did that for my kid.
Yeah, and a lot of what we're talking about is, people have this mindset that money is currency, but the truth is there are many forms of currency, and it is more valuable to build community and have the trust of friends and neighbors who know they could count on you than money can ever be. Because no matter what happens, if shit hits the proverbial fan, those people that trust you, that respect you, that you've gone out of your way to help them when you didn't have to, they will come to bat for you. And that is a currency that it's not taught. In fact, they actively do everything they can to isolate people from their neighbor. Or like this podcast, for example. I wrote a book. You reached out to me unprompted, said, "Do you want to come on to my podcast?" Well, as you start to get bigger, or if you ever need any help, of course, I'm like, Joel needs my help. Of course, I'm gonna help him. And you say, "Oh, well, yeah, that's good," but it helps me in the same way, because now I have this friend, so your success becomes my success, right? People go back, they watch your old podcast, they say, "Oh, this opinionated guy is interesting. He thinks differently."
Yeah.
So it's like people with just mindset shifts can achieve so much that seems completely foreign, but we can build. It's really it's a good thing.
No, that's really good. I think we're here at about hour and a half or so into it, so I think this might be a good stopping point. And I think my kids might be waking up, and when they get up, nothing really gets done, Brett. So I think this might be a good stopping point, man. But again, really appreciate you coming on. Did you want to go ahead and like have any kind of last message here before we close up shop for the day?
Yeah, Joel, thanks so much for having me on. If anyone wants to find my work, you can find me at www.classicallearner.com. My books is the Cubs to Bears series. Good Bears always tell the truth, and find your purpose in life. People want happiness, but the best way to find happiness is through purpose.
Nice. And then what is your Twitter, if they want to get a hold of you on Twitter or any other social media?
Classical Learner, or I think it's at Classic Learner.
Okay, and I think your Twitter is at Classic Learner on Twitter is how you can find Brett. Brett, just appreciate you coming on to the show. He's an education consultant, author of The Good Bears Always Tell the Truth. It's currently #1 on Amazon for Christian children's concepts. I bought the book for my kids. I like supporting people who are, trying to produce things that are positive, especially for our kids. So, Brett, appreciate you coming on, especially the short notice. Like you said, you didn't really know me. I read the book, and I was just like, hey, be a good guy to have on. And just appreciate you coming on. So have a good one, Brett.
All right. God bless, Joel.
Thank you. God bless.